Hey everyone, I'm Scott Stokely, and I am going to share with you a very specific type of approach shot. It's one that I find to make life so much easier for me because in the right situation, it is the easiest, by far the easiest way to gauge distance control. And I'm going to warn you in advance, I'm going to talk about it specific to the owl from Stokely Discs. So if it sounds like I'm pitching the owl, I kind of am a little bit. But I named this disc the owl specifically because it is the bird that most fits with this technique. Because the technique I'm talking about is called the hunting technique. And the hunting technique is just a type of approach shot you'll be able to throw in certain situations, again, with the primary goal being distance control. Now, before I explain exactly what that is, I always talk philosophy first. And basically, with all of your shot selection and disc selection, it comes down to not what happens when you throw the shot well, but what happens when you don't throw the shot correctly. Okay, so right here, I'm looking at a hole. It's 200 feet away. There's a lake shy of the basket, so I can't go too short. There's woods along the basket. I don't want to go too long. Every single disc made, every single person watching this video, if thrown correctly, could land that disc under the basket. It has nothing to do with what happens when you get it right. It has to do with what happens when you get it wrong. Basically, you want to create the smallest variance on the bad shots. So I'll just give you one example of this. You have a putter, a mid, and a driver, and you're throwing your approach shot. If you throw them all perfectly, they're all under the target. But if you throw each of those three discs, let's say 5% too hard, well, the putter goes a little bit past, the mid-range goes a fair amount past, the driver goes way past. Same identical error, and we're all capable of throwing 5% too hard, same error, but the right disc selection gave you a shorter putt than the poor disc selection. So it's about what happens when you get it wrong. Now, this is where the hunting technique comes in. So I call it the hunting technique. And again, I came up with this because of the owl. It's very symbiotic. But when I think of an owl, I think of an owl flying through the air, looking around for its prey, flying straight through the air, and as soon as it spots its prey, it makes an immediate turn and just wham, just dive bombs in for the kill. Well, that's what a disc like the owl will do. You can throw this disc straight, a little bit higher to the side of the target. The disc will mostly fly straight. It's a little overstable even at slower speeds. But once it spots its prey, wham, 90-degree turn in for the kill. Now, how does this apply to distance control? Well, it's all about what happens when you get it wrong. So let's say I throw my shot with the owl, but I accidentally throw it a little bit too low. Well, if I throw it too low, it doesn't lose speed as quickly because it's not climbing, which means it's not slowing down as much, but it's compensated for the fact that it's also going to hit the ground sooner because you threw it lower, meaning when you throw it lower, it traveled the same distance, give or take, as it did when you threw a little bit higher. Well, what happens when you throw the owl a little bit too high? Well, the opposite holds true. It's higher, so it can travel farther before hitting the ground, increasing its distance, but simultaneously it was losing speed because it was trying to climb, which means it slowed down faster, meaning when you threw it too high, it flew the same distance. Basically, a disc like the owl, when you use the hunting technique, doesn't allow you to mess up. So I'm looking at this target right here. I'm going to throw 5 basically somewhat different shots to the target, and all 5 of them are going to land by the target, not because I play a lot and I'm so good, but because I'm choosing the right disc for the shot and the right technique. But stick around, because afterwards I will tell you the downside. I always give you the cons along with the pros if there are some, and there's a downside to this technique, but first I'll demonstrate. Ah, the wind caught the last one a little bit. So There is a downside to the hunting technique, okay? Actually, there's two. Number one, whenever you take a disc that is effectively flying like a wing, the more you turn it this way, it more turns into a sail, meaning the wind affects it more. So on windy days, hunting technique is probably not the best technique in most cases because it's harder to control what the wind is going to do to the disc. And the second downside is when a disc comes in at this angle, you can get a somewhat unpredictable landing. Now, when you're on flat ground, nice grass, moot point, not an issue. But if you're trying to land the disc on the side of a hill, or there's rocks, or there's roots, or there's any potential of rolling away, you also got to gauge the playing the hillside correctly. So it's not a fix-all for every situation. But when you have an approach shot that's wide open, it's the easiest approach shot there is, but especially if there's a penalty for going too short or too far, it really basically doesn't allow you to mess up. And by the way, if you're interested in the owl from Stokely Discs, go to your local pro shop vendor or club and buy from them directly. If they don't, you can go to stokelydiscs.com, but call your local pro shop first. All right, thanks everyone.